The Fast and Furious franchise has become known for a few things: star-studded casts, over-the-top, explosive action sequences, and its emphasis on family. But with 11 films now making up the franchise, plus an impending 12th on the horizon, has Fast and Furious lost itself? Well, I don't think the answer to that question is a definitive yes. I just think the movies have evolved over time. They went from being about racing and heists to world tour espionage films almost. However, the movie that got the best formula down to a T was Fast 5. Coming off the heels of a rather underwhelming installment in 2009's Fast and Furious, a shakeup was needed. At this time, I didn't consider the series as one of Hollywood's premier franchises. I remember as a kid growing up watching Too Fast, Too Furious on repeat. By no means was Fast and Furious anywhere close to as popular back then as it is today. Their highest grossing movie up to that point was the fourth entry, having made just $360 million worldwide. Not that that's not a substantial amount. In comparison to 2009's highest grossing movies though, it fell short. For example, Transformers Revenge of the Fallen made $836 million the same year. Nowadays, Fast and Furious is clearly on the same level as Transformers, if not having surpassed it popularity-wise. But back then, F&F was well outside the top 10 most popular film franchises. Whereas in 2025, if you group together all Marvel properties, Fast and Furious would rank 5th among the highest grossing. So where did this change for Fast and Furious occur, you ask? When did the trajectory for these action flicks go from mid-tier franchise movies to one of Hollywood's most lucrative properties? The answer is when Fast 5 released in 2011. 14 years ago, they reinvented themselves for the better, putting out what, in my opinion, is absolutely their best film to date. Now then, what exactly made Fast 5 a major upgrade over the likes of the franchise's first 4 installments? And why have none of their movies been as good since? Why was Fast 5 peak Fast and Furious? To start, we gotta address the cast. Okay, of course you have a franchise mainstay and Paul Walker returning alongside Vin Diesel. There were only a handful of F&F films without them before Walker's passing in 2014. In addition, you have returnees from the previous entry, including Gal Gadot, Jordana Brewster, Tego Calderon, and Don Omar, plus Sun Khan, this time in a much more prominent role. But to up the ante, Ludacris and Tyrese Gibson came back to the series for the first time since Too Fast, Too Furious. Obviously, these guys are now known mainly for Fast and Furious, considering they've appeared in every movie from Fast 5 to Fast X, but I just remember wondering where they were in 2009's Fast and Furious. So when they reappeared in this one, I was ecstatic. And if it couldn't get any better, Dwayne Johnson debuted in Fast 5 as Luke Hobbs, acting as a villain for a majority of the blockbuster. In 2011, Dwayne was still better known for his time in WWE, despite starring in a multitude of films such as Tooth Fairy, Race to Witch Mountain, and Doom. But come on, Dwayne back then wasn't the Dwayne we have today. And I believe Fast 5 is the movie that cemented his stardom. Without Fast and Furious, he may not be as sought after as he has been over the last 10 years. Fast 5 was the film that elevated Dwayne beyond the Rock persona, in my opinion. So Fast 5 had an amazing cast and sparked the beginning of the franchise's star-studded lineups. Having this great cast also paved the way for some excellent character moments. Fast 5 showcases a plethora of memorable sequences shared between characters, sequences that otherwise would be quickly forgotten if not for integrating fan-favorite personalities. Potentially, the film's best sequence of events involves Vin Diesel's Dominic Toretto and Dwayne Johnson's Hobbs. Throughout a large portion of Fast 5, Hobbs is tasked with tracking down Dom's crew. Soon, Hobbs catches up to the gang, inconveniently surrounded by a group of Rio de Janeiro natives. This Hobbs and Toretto standoff is one of the franchise's most iconic moments. Their beef then culminates to a fistfight. Following this, everyone gets ambushed by the main villain's men, leading to the death of almost all on Hobbs' team. Luckily for Luke Hobbs, Dom and Brian save his life. From here, we get exactly what we've been waiting for the entire movie, a Hobbs and Toretto team-up. This storyline in Fast 5 is a huge bright spot for the series, and maybe my favorite sequence of events the franchise has offered to fans. But it's not only moments like these that make Fast 5 stand out amongst the crowded Fast and Furious field. The humor is top-notch too. Fast and Furious's first 4 flicks didn't have a whole lot of great comedic timing. I mean, I guess Too Fast, Too Furious kinda, thanks to Tyrese. Other than that though, nothing is worth noting from a comedy standpoint. Until Fast 5 released. Tyrese and Ludacris make up a majority of Fast 5's humor. Having these two back was a blessing. They provided a complete tonal shift from what we saw in the 4th entry. No longer did the franchise feel so dark. Once Fast 5 came out, they got the formula right. This isn't a franchise that should be taking itself so seriously. It's Fast and Furious after all. So bringing back Tyrese and Ludacris greatly helped implement a necessary change. Now that I mention it, this actually may be the funniest of the Fast and Furious films. And Dwayne Johnson's inclusion assists in that regard as well. We knew The Rock as a funny guy in WWE and previous movies, so without question, when given the chance, Dwayne steals every scene in Fast 5. A few of his one-liners got me laughing good on rewatch. Alrighty then, I've saved best for last. Where Fast 5 truly separates itself from the rest of the Fast and Furious pack has gotta be with its action scenes. Yeah, Justin Lin delivered one of the best action movies ever made in 2011. This thing is high-octane, non-stop adrenaline-pumping entertainment. What Justin's choreography team did was craft original stunts and blended those with practical effects. Whether you're watching the film's early train sequence or safe heist during the conclusion, everything still looks great. Not to mention that amazing white-knuckle brawl between Dom and Hobbs. I can't say enough how impressed I am by these scenes in 2025. I wish Fast and Furious stayed true to using practical effects as much nowadays. Sure, there's no shortage of creativity, but more often than not, the newer movies just don't look very good, you know? CGI explosions, CGI submarines, CGI cars driving through CGI buildings, etc. The action doesn't hold up nearly as well as it did in Fast 5. I seriously cannot wrap my head around how they pulled off filming the sequence. Like, it just looks incredible. 2011 was a different time compared to present-day Hollywood. If Fast and Furious wants to make a movie as great as Fast 5 again, they'll have to revisit this one. I'm crossing my fingers we see it in Fast X Part 2, but knowing how the last 6 Fast and Furious films have looked, I have little faith. So for all these reasons, Fast 5 remains peak Fast and Furious. This movie transformed what we knew Fast and Furious as into something better, transitioning from niche racing flicks to money-making blockbusters. Fast 5 put together an array of vibrant personalities, giving them actual clever dialogue while constructing some of the best action sequences I've seen in my whole life, making Fast 5 undoubtedly the long-reigning Fast and Furious king. Do you agree with my take on Fast 5? Is it the best movie Fast and Furious has ever made? And how do you feel about it overall, 14 years since it was released? Let me know your opinion in the comments. Well, thank you to those who stuck around to watch this video. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe, and if you enjoyed yourself, click that like button. I'll catch you all in the next one. See you then.